Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of our death investigation into the death of Kurt Cobain. How is everyone doing today? I'm just gonna make sure, as usual, that our sound, is good. Welcome. Okay, so today we're going to continue looking at the police files and their investigation of it immediately after Kurt's body was discovered. And I think those files are important because, again, it's the official investigation and it gives us a lot of information that will be useful later on. But it also tells us, if you recall from last week, we talked about when we read these police reports to keep in mind the tone of the investigation and to see, whether or not the investigation was handled in a non-biased way. So that's kind of what I've been looking for as I read these files the first time around. So keep that in mind because a lot of the questions that we'll come back to, this will be important. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Hi, Cement Shoes. Heather, whatever. Hi, Mama Bear. So as you come in, as you gather in, I thought I would play another video / song. I chose this particular one. In my research, there's thousands of hours of footage and interviews and a lot of fan content that fans put together that is excellent. So the next video that I'm going to play is another video from YouTube that I will link below afterwards. And it's a timeline of photos from Kurt Cobain. I don't know how accurate the timeline is. So I thought it was interesting. And the song that's playing in the background is a live performance. So enjoy. I hope you're jamming along. Okay, so let's get started. I want to make sure that this works. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Is sound good? Y'all are quiet today in chat, so any questions that you might have from part 1, I can answer them. Try to anyways. And what was the other thing that I needed to let you guys know? Well, Stella's here with me, so she's distracting me as usual. Yes, I wanted to mention the comments. There were a lot of comments for the replay, and they were positive, a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of people weren't really aware of how messed up this case is and how many questions there are in the case. So without further ado, I did share the link to the live chat to my mods, so they might be joining me later, one or more of them, as I read through the presentation, because I wasn't able to really keep an eye on chat last time. So, but let us begin. Let me just find myself. Heather, whatever, says she didn't imagine Kurt would be funny. He was hilarious. Okay. Phone distracting me. Everything is distracting me. Oh yeah, we will get plenty of opportunities to see Kurt's personality. Okay. So this is on the day of the discovery of the body. So it's April 8th, 94. Detective Davis receives a telephone call from Harvey Ottinger. I'm going to butcher these names, so don't, who lives at such and such address. Ottinger says that he works for Cali Limousine service as a driver, and in that capacity, he picked up Kurt Cobain at his house last week, I think Wednesday. He said that he waited at the house for approximately 1 hour before Cobain was ready. He was supposed to take Cobain to SeaTac Airport for a flight to Los Angeles. He said that upon arrival at the airport, Cobain told him he had just purchased a shotgun a couple of hours ago. The reason he told Ottinger this was that he had a box of shotgun shells with him and couldn't take them on the airplane with him, and offered them to Ottinger. He took them and advised that he still had them if they were needed by police. So this is one of the cab drivers. So now we're starting to put the puzzle pieces together to Kurt's last days. Later, I believe this was Kirkland's notes. Same day, received a request from Sergeant Cameron to contact Ben Klugman again. At this and this number, he's an employee of the Tom Grant Company of Beverly Hills, California. They are a private investigations company retained by Cobain's attorney. Apparently, there has been some unauthorized use of Cobain's credit card, and they are investigating the matter. Later, Detective Kirkland calls this private investigator, Ben Klugman. He says Cobain walked away from a treatment program in Los Angeles on 4/2. That should be 94, not 84. He went to a ticket outlet and purchased a ticket on Delta Airlines Flight 788 from LAX to Seattle for $478. This transaction took place at 8:07 p.m., and the purchase was made with C1st charge card. Sometimes after 8:07 p.m., Courtney Love found out that Cobain had walked away from the treatment center and canceled the C1st card. Someone tried to make a $150 cash draw at 8:43 p.m., but the stop had already been put on the card. So again, this is going to be important in terms of timeline. Klugman says he's been speaking to Steve Sparks at C1st Security, but that Sparks was unable to supply any further information because they are having problems with their computer. I told Klugman that I would call him back on Monday, 4/11, to see what else he learned. So this is the next day. Return phone call from Officer Lewandowski. He states that because of the rain that day, he knew that no one had entered the greenhouse before he and Fire, as there were no wet footprints on the floor before entering. He says that upon entering, he noted they all left wet footprints on the floor. Later on, Captain Ferrer released a signed and dated copy of the suicide note to the victim's attorney, Alan Dreher. Dreher signed on a business card for receipt. So this is interesting for me because in terms of the footprints, so they're trying to establish possibly when whatever happened. And so they're saying, well, yesterday when they discovered the body, so no one was there the morning of the 8th because it was raining. But later on, it was established that Kurt, according to the medical examiner, Kurt had been already dead since the 5th. So I don't think, there would have been footprints there, assuming that his body wasn't moved and he was there since the 5th. So those footprints could have easily dried off, well, if there were any to begin with. So that was interesting. And then also that they, so they gave the signed and dated copy of the suicide note to the victim's attorney the next day. And then this guy is going to be important. Sergeant Cameron. He was the head of the homicide unit. So the next day after the discovery of the body, he sends out a memorandum to the police department and says, as of 4/9 at 1:30 p.m., no one is to examine or check out any item placed in evidence under this incident number without the permission of Sergeant Don Cameron or Captain Larry Ferrer of the homicide unit. So two things. One, you can see on this document that it was listed as type of offense as a suicide. And by this point, they had already ruled it a suicide. And, I'm wondering, well, again, see, as I'm talking out loud, I'm also reminded that this is a high profile case. So on the one hand, it makes sense because it's a high profile case. On the other hand, no one is to examine or check out any items in evidence unless given permission. So the general public wouldn't have access to the evidence in the first place. Therefore, this memorandum clearly is intended for law enforcement. So why are law enforcement not allowed to access evidence without someone's permission is what I would like to know. So that's number one. Number one was it's a suicide. Why is homicide not allowing people to view the evidence? Number two kind of goes with number one, and that's with regards to this Don Cameron guy and evidence, because later this is going to be important. So this investigation is taking place in 1994. But in 1999, Don Cameron retires after allegations of tampering with evidence in another homicide case, but we will get to that. So the fact that now, with knowing what happened in 1999, this was a huge red flag for me that, essentially he was in charge of all the evidence. So that would be the first thing that if I were presenting this case to be reopened for investigation, like this would be the first red flag. Anything that this guy touched needs to be thoroughly investigated. Everything. So, yeah, but this particular person, Sergeant Cameron, he is deceased. He did pass away of old age later on. So, that would be one of the issues if there was another case to be opened, but totally sus. Let me get a little sip of my drink. Okay, this is the 11th. So Tom Grant is a private investigator, called the detectives. So Tom Grant said that C First is unable to decipher their records at this time, but they're still trying to figure out what has been taken place. I told Grant that I would call him back at 10 hours, or at 10 o'clock. 10:30, he calls him back, said that he would fax some information over to him, and then they would discuss it. So then he received a fax from Tom Grant, and it is a chronological listing of the use of the credit card, starting on the 1st of April and ending on the 8th. And then this is the content of the phone call that they had. So this is with Kirkland. So phone call to Grant. Spoke to Grant and Klugman. Klugman explains that the times shown on the listings are inaccurate because the times shown are the times the attempts were noted in the computer, not when the actual attempted transactions took place. All of the transactions after the Delta purchase were attempted over the phone, so C First has no idea where they occurred since the card was canceled and two transactions actually took place. Klugman said he had talked to Courtney Love, and she told him that they lent their credit cards to people frequently, and she doesn't know whether or not Cobain gave the card to someone. Klugman added that C First Security told them that this is all of the information that is available and that they would not be able to get anything further out of their systems. Klugman said he would be in contact if he received any further information. And that same day, they submitted a fingerprint analysis of the shotgun to their own crime lab for investigation. On the 13th, to the SPD evidence unit. Checked Cobain's wallet. There is no C First card with the above listed number in the wallet. There are two C First Versateller cards with different numbers in the wallet. So, problem number one, this credit card that, hi faraway eyes, this credit card that Kurt Cobain was using is, hi baked cake. Oh, thank you for staying up all night. Wow, 4:50 in the morning. Jeez. Well, it's Friday at least. So, Okay, so the 13th, they have had Kurt Cobain's wallet in their possession since the autopsy, since the scene, etc., etc. They checked the content of the wallet on the 13th, and they realized that the credit card that was used by Kurt Cobain to purchase the airline ticket to fly himself from Los Angeles to Seattle was not in his wallet. So where the F is this card is my question. And going back to this report where Klugman is reporting that Courtney Love says that, oh, sometimes we just give people our credit cards because, we just do that to give people. So that doesn't make sense. I mean, I get it. They're famous and, people do things differently when they're rich and famous. So I don't know whether or not this is a true statement, especially coming from Courtney Love. I would say that it's false, but who knows? Just something to keep in mind, that the credit card that Kurt used himself to purchase this flight ticket does not exist on his person at the time of his discovery. So point number 2 about this credit card is that obviously it was used after Kurt Cobain's death. So whoever has it tried to use it repeatedly. Let's keep going. Okay, the 12th, this is the interview that they conduct with Dylan Carlson. Hi, Edward. Hi, Rivka. Cement shoes, how can they not be able to check their own records? I don't know. That's sketch. And now, this Don Sargent, or Don, what am I talking about? Sergeant Don Cameron, him having a history, well, a future at that point, of tampering with evidence at a homicide scene. That's like the first avenue that I would explore is, did the police themselves tamper with this evidence? And I think in 2014, they did their own little investigation that we talked about last time. Hi, Mag. Welcome. They did their own little investigation into themselves. So yeah, this would be the first thing that I would bring to an external agency to investigate this investigation. So I don't know who that would be, the Attorney General's office, or if that would be the senator. Look, the district attorney, I don't know. Yes, I do, but I'm not here to give legal advice. Let's just keep going. Okay. This is the interview of Dylan Carlson. Why do I have a feeling that I'm really loud? This is an interview of Dylan Carlson, who is Kurt Cobain's best friend. So he is going to be an important figure in the timeline or the reconstruction of Kurt Cobain's last days and hours in our analysis. So this is his police interview. Dylan Carlson returns this writer's call. Carlson states that he and Kurt purchased the shotgun and ammunition on the 30th of March. Kurt provided the cash and Carlson made the actual purchase. Carlson stated that Kurt did not want to buy the weapon in his name as police had already confiscated 4 of his weapons, and Kurt was afraid if the gun was bought in his name, it would also be confiscated. Carlson tried to get Cobain to buy a 12-gauge pistol grip riot-type shotgun, but none were available, so Kurt opted to buy the 20-gauge. Kurt was asked by Carlson to wait till he returned from California in a month or so, but Kurt wanted the weapon now. Carlson tried to get Kurt to leave the shotgun at his house, but Kurt took it to his friend's residence. Kurt took it to his residence on Lake Washington Boulevard. They went out to the airport where Kurt realized he still had the shotgun ammunition on him, so he gave it to the cab driver. Carlson states that that was the last time he saw or talked to Cobain. Carlson states Kurt's nanny called him on Wednesday, 4/6, asking if he had seen Kurt Cobain. Carlson will be available for any additional questions at his residence. So this is Kurt's best friend, and this gives us an insight into Kurt's state of mind when he purchased the shotgun. So at this point, we don't see any evidence to suggest that Carlson is being untruthful about his events or account, because it is corroborated by the taxi driver. So they did go out and buy the gun together, and Kurt did have his guns confiscated, which is an event we'll talk about later. And Kurt did say that let's see, where did I see that? He did leave the ammunition with the cab driver. So this is the only interview with the person who is one of the last people to speak with Kurt. Then the same day that they discovered that the credit card was missing, they also found this note in his wallet, and it is from the Phoenix. And it says, "Do you, Kurt Cobain, take Courtney Michelle Love to be your lawful shredded wife, even when she's a bitch?" I think milking is what we eventually came up with. "And siphoning all your money for doping and whoring. Will you promise to F her at least once a week?" Okay, period. So Courtney Love claims that she wrote this, but again, I don't know. I did look at the timeline of this note. They would have been in the San Francisco area on December 31st. Nirvana played in Oakland, so I'm assuming that's where that comes from. But we'll talk about that more later, as I said. 14th, the detective calls Ben Klugman, again, the private investigator, to find out who they think last saw Cobain alive. He said that Courtney Love called him this AM at 1. They were in a 3-way conversation with her attorney. Love told him that their driver, Linda, picked Cobain up at SeaTac on 4/1/94. He asked about reports in Seattle papers concerning the last people that had seen Cobain, and I told him that we had not given that information to the press. So keep this in mind. Obviously, the news media at this point is going berserk, and there's a lot of rumors circulating. And as we've seen in our analysis of Courtney Love, one of her MOs, like her calling cards, is planting stories or leaking stories in the press. So all of these little things, all of these pieces of misinformation that the media took and ran with, I guarantee can be tracked back to Courtney because it's in her history. Okay, on the 14th, detectives Yoshida and Kirkland went to 171 Lake Washington. They met with Cobain's mother, Wendy, and Eric. Detectives asked to speak with Jackie Ferry, the nanny, Jackie Ferry, the nanny, Mike DeWitt, and the limo driver, Linda. Detectives were informed that Mike DeWitt was in Arizona. Now, Mike DeWitt is Cali. This is the nanny, the babysitter, who is very, very questionable, for me at least, when looking into this highly dysfunctional family dynamic that we have going on in the Cobain household. So we have this very, very eccentric, sociopathic Courtney, who is draining the energy out of everybody in her circle with her paranoia, with her clinginess, with her just dysfunction and need for control. You have Kurt Cobain, who himself, we're still putting together his state of mind, so we can't really say at this point. But according to Courtney, we have this very distraught and suicidal and depressed Kurt, who just is in the pits of addiction. But as the timeline unfolds and unravels, Kurt, in his own words, will tell us his own state of mind during the last months, weeks, and days leading up to his death. So it's not going to be consistent with the story that we get from his wife. That is why we're also going to look very deep into like a psychological analysis of Kurt and Courtney's relationship. And I think once we do that, it will be clearer, at least for me, that will help answer the question as to what was happening and why it was happening. So back to this nanny. So at this time, this nanny is supposed to watch Frances, the baby. At this point, she's still a baby. And the interesting thing is that during the same time, that same nanny is going through a very severe addiction himself. So Mike DeWitt, Cali, is also very addicted to cocaine, opiates, whatever the hell they were using. At this point, I don't think it really matters. The point is that how the hell can you have a nanny that is also like just as sick as you are, right? So this very addicted nanny is still kept on the payroll and as a nanny, as a live-in nanny at the Cobain residence, because not only is this person, the nanny for Frances, but they're also Courtney Love's ex-boyfriend. And of course, as the apostle would say, of course, just ex-Michelle. Funny enough that Courtney Love's middle name is also Michelle. Now, sarcasm aside, I do have a dark sense of humor. For those of you who don't know me and you're new here because of the Cobain case, but I do like to be sarcastic when I go over this. That doesn't mean that I am, biased in any way. And if I am, trust me, I checked it at the door. So yes, this is after analysis. All right. So this nanny is the last person to have seen Kurt Cobain alive. Now you can see there's a conflict in me to call this person a nanny, because a nanny, suggests someone warm, someone experienced, someone nurturing, someone, who has their shit together. And just a quick glance at who this Cali person is, it's obvious that nanny wouldn't be the appropriate term. So, okay. Love told him, okay, so sorry. Mike DeWitt, the limo driver, Linda. Okay. Detectives were informed that Cali was in Arizona. Jackie would return shortly and were told to contact Jeff Mason. Mason is the business manager for Nirvana. His address is blah, blah, blah. Also spoke with O'Connor and Eric about a sample of the victim's writing. They spoke with the victim's attorney, Dreyer, and he states that he has a sample of Cobain's writing and will give it to detectives. O'Connor stated that she read the note and that it was everyone's opinion and hers that the victim wrote it. Now, here you see, again, this is just sloppy writing on the police part. Excuse me. Because at the end of this paragraph, I don't know what note they're talking about. I'm going to assume that they're talking about the suicide note. And O'Connor is Cobain's mother. So she is at this point in Seattle at the home where Kurt was discovered. And she is there with Eric, Courtney Love, and this nanny. Returned a phone call from Sean O'Donnell. He states he talked with Melissa Rossi, a writer for Newsweek. She told him that on 4/7, there were several calls made for gray top cabs to go to 171 Lake Washington Boulevard to pick up a fare. This information was given to Rossi by another gray top driver who said he was told this by a gray top driver. So, one thing. So there were a bunch of calls on 4/7. 4/7 is the day before Kurt was found. And 4/7 is the day that Kurt's body had already been in the greenhouse for 2 days, at least 3 days, since the 5th, assuming it wasn't moved. So that's what we want to know. Spoiler alert, it was Cali, the nanny. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Let's keep going. So the detective called a gray top cab, spoke with office personnel. He states that a cab did go to 171 on 4/7 at approximately 4 p.m. Says they saved the log because a reporter called earlier in the week and wanted the information, but they would not give it to her. The cab was number 4, and it was driven by Buck McGee. Okay, it's Mike McGee. So the driver says that he went to 171 Lake Washington on 4/7 at about 4 p.m., picked up a white male in his 20s, 5'8" to 5'9", medium to thin build, some facial hair and dark hair. The man was wearing shorts and was carrying a bag, like a small briefcase. McGee says that this passenger seemed very relaxed and not really concerned about anything. Sounds like any other dope head I've come across, and not in a derogatory way, but really though, like, which dope head doesn't seem relaxed and not concerned about anything? He says he's been to the house several times, 5 or 6, and seems to recall that he dropped these passengers, now he's referring to plural, off in the area of the west side of Capitol Hill. McGee states he would do some checking to try to figure out where he dropped the passenger off on the 7th. Received a return call from Mike McGee. He says that he remembers taking the fare from 4/7 to the airport. So now he's calling Jeff Mason, the road production manager, this detective is. And Jeff Mason says he had no knowledge of this incident until 4/8 when he heard about Cobain's death on the radio. He says that everybody involved with Nirvana was in Los Angeles except for himself, Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Dreyer. That's the attorney. I think he spelled it wrong. Well, yeah. He said that most of their transportation needs were met by either Seattle Limousine or Cary Limousine. He says Courtney Love's attorney is Rosemarie Carroll. So then he called the limousines to follow up. And the Seattle Limousine, Steve Morgan, said that he was in the office on April 1st at approximately 8. He received a call from Cobain. Cobain told him that he would be arriving in Seattle at approximately 10 to 1 after midnight on 4/2 and wanted to be picked up. Morgan notified Linda Walker and dispatched her to pick him up. Linda Walker lives blah, blah, blah. So then after that phone call, Alan Dreyer, Cobain's attorney, came into the office and retrieved the items that were collected from the scene. And that included the cash that was on Cobain, Cobain's wallet, cigarettes, lighter, dark glasses, his hat, 2 towels, and his brown jacket. Okay, so once the attorney picked that up, then Linda called back. This is the driver, and she said she was at home during the evening of the 1st, and she received a call from her employer. He asked her to come to work to pick up a client. She said she was directed to pick up Kurt Cobain at Delta Airlines flight 788, which was to arrive at 47 past midnight. She said she drove their black Mercedes Marquise to the airport because Cobain didn't like the limousines. She said the flight was about 10 minutes late and that Cobain was talking to some people when he got off the airplane. He alone got into the car with her. She drove him to his residence at 171 Lake Boulevard, Washington Boulevard. She dropped him off at approximately 1:30 on 4/2, and he walked up the driveway. She said she had driven Cobain home one other time. She identified herself as a white female. Okay. Now this is Jackie Ferry, and she called detectives on the 15th. She is another nanny employed by the Cobain family, and she said she last saw Kurt Cobain on Friday the 1st, right before he walked away from the rehab center. So this is, the last person to see Kurt before, he quote unquote disappeared. So she said she last saw him on that Friday between 11 and 1. She took the baby to visit Cobain and visited at the Exodus Rehab Center where Cobain was a patient. She said Cobain was in room 206. She said she found out that Cobain had walked away from the rehab center on Saturday when she got up. Courtney told her that Kurt had left. So here's our good friend, Sergeant Cameron. So 4:15, just keeping in mind that this is the same time, the same day that, police is starting to put together a timeline for what was going on during Kurt's last moments. And on the 15th, you have our guy, Cameron, calling the detective saying that, hey, guess what? You get to interview Courtney on the 18th. Excuse me. So on the 15th, then Tom Grant, actually, this is from his files, he did go to the Seattle police station and met with this Cameron guy and discussed the case with Cameron. This is what Grant says he discusses. The missing credit card and the continued activity on the credit card even after Kurt's death. Courtney specifically told Dylan to check the greenhouse, but Dylan didn't even tell me there was a greenhouse. The letter on the stairs from Cali seemed phony and didn't make sense. Document examiners said Courtney wrote the letter on the stairs. This was later debunked. There are doubts about Kurt's handwriting on the so-called suicide note, especially the bottom portion, and the electrician's statement about Kurt's hair appearing to have been combed. And 2, Courtney's motives for possible involvement in Kurt Cobain's death, that she'd get more money from a suicide than from a divorce. With a suicide, Courtney would inherit and control the Cobain Nirvana estate. If Kurt divorced her, she'd have to settle for half of Kurt's assets at best. And he wasn't wrong, because ultimately that is what continues to happen. Kurt's record sales would increase, leaving Courtney with even more income. And based on what I'd learned about her personality, Kurt's death and the publicity it was generating would help Courtney launch her career. Now, this is Tom Grant, the private investigator that Courtney Love herself hired, right? He's telling this corrupt detective sergeant, and I call him corrupt because he was terminated. Well, he wasn't terminated. He retired right before he was terminated for being a corrupt detective. So, you know, the questions and the points that Tom Grant is making to this corrupt detective are valid, because the first time I went through the police reports, you know, I had some of the same questions, and we're not the only ones. Okay, I need to take a breather, so let me look at chat really quick to get your thoughts on this. Thank you, Faraway Eyes, for the super sticker. Thank you so much. If any of the girls would like to come on panel, please. Heather, thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank y'all. Heather, how could Kurt stay clean sober in that atmosphere if he wanted that? And maybe on the flip side, how could their party continue? Interesting questions. Yes. Oh, girl, let me tell you, we are going to get into all of that. And once we get through this factual evidence, I'm going to get into the psychological bits and pieces of this, and that will really, like, the case files really put the timeline together. And once you put the timeline together, I always say the story tells itself. So there's a lot. I did reach out to a lovely lady. She is a former coroner. She's retired currently, but she is a coroner. And she has agreed to come and speak with us about the toxicology results. So we're trying to get a time together for that. So that's exciting. But let's keep going. Tom Grant continues. He asked Sergeant Cameron why he told him the door was locked from the inside, pointing out that the lock was a simple push-in and twist type. Anyone could have pulled that door shut after locking it, I added. There was a stool wedged up against the door, Sergeant Cameron replied, with a touch of resentment in his voice. I assumed the police had evidence that Kurt was alone when the shotgun was discharged, but I still had some real problems with this case. So I asked Sergeant Cameron if I could look at the photographs to see why the electrical supervisor thought Kurt's hair had been combed. We haven't developed the photographs and probably never will, he responded. We don't develop photographs on suicides. Nothing you've said convinces me this is anything but a suicide, Sergeant Cameron informed me as we concluded this meeting. So Cameron, Donnie boy, immediately shut him down. Okay, so they continue to call people on the 18th. Okay, this is a day of the interview with Courtney Love. Now, hi, Apostle. Welcome back. You're just in time. We're about to look at Miss Courtney Love's police interview. Unfortunately, it has not been recorded, so we have to go with the detective's words. So, on the 18th, 10 days later, so 10 days after Kurt Cobain's death, Detectives Kirkland and Yoshida go to 171 Lake Washington and met with Courtney Cobain. Courtney says that she knows that her husband's death is a suicide, but she wants to know what his activities were in the days prior to his death. She states that Michael DeWitt, Cali, told her that he last saw Kurt on 4/2 in the morning. DeWitt is also the person who left a letter on the stairs telling Kurt to take care of business because he had a wife and a child. This is important that this information is coming from Courtney. So in my notes, I have a big ass star next to that sentence because Courtney, detectives have heard about this note from Grant, the private investigator, and now conveniently, Courtney is so cooperative and she brings it up to detectives. Okay. She says a psychiatrist told her that if she left the state and went to a place where Kurt could get treatment, he would follow. On the 28th of April, Courtney says that she went to Los Angeles, and on the 30th of April, Kurt arrived. This is when Kurt checked himself into the treatment center. After she was told that Kurt had checked out, she hired private investigators to try to locate him. She says that on Thursday, she was arrested by Beverly Hills Police Department, and that the next day, she learned of Kurt's death. Courtney was told of the need for a handwriting sample from Kurt. She turned over three small pages of note paper, which contained the suicide note that Kurt had written in Rome. And voila, here you have the first ever mention of a previous suicide attempt. So it's just so casually mentioned that there is this suicide note from Rome and that there was this previous attempt. So first time ever mentioned. And of course, this information comes from Courtney Love. So what does this note say, you ask? Well, let's see. The heading on the note paper read, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. A business card was given to Courtney with the receipt for the note written on the back. Very important now, their relationship was going through hard times because of Kurt's frequent use of drugs and the fact that she tried to get him to stop. She said that 6 days after Kurt tried to take his life in Rome, he again used drugs. This frustrated and angered her. Love was given business cards of both detectives and advised that if she had questions to call. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, the interview, the official quote unquote interview with detectives that is on file in the suicide of Kurt Cobain. However, we know that there are multiple conversations and phone calls with various people, particularly Mr. Cameron, who, you know, yes, Alicia, that's correct. So this is the 18th. This is when she was interviewed, and this is the same day that she provided the Rome, quote unquote, the Rome note for handwriting analysis. So that same day, surprise, surprise, at 1:20, detectives are over interviewing Courtney Love. And immediately after, Cali calls. The last person to see him alive calls him and says, "Oh, he previously planned on being in he planned on being in Seattle today, but ill health prevented his travel, so he couldn't be there in person. He couldn't be there in person." Michael states that he will be coming up next week and will contact this office, which had yet to happen. Or has yet to happen. He will cooperate in this investigation, he says, even though we're told that there is no investigation and that it is a suicide 5 minutes into it. Okay, so he will cooperate. Michael states that he did write the note Tom Grant found on the main staircase of the Cobain home. He states that he was pissed at Kurt for the way he was treating Courtney. This is the note Tom Grant was sure Courtney wrote or had written to throw suspicion off her. Michael states that Courtney and he have been friends for years, while he and Kurt have only been close for about 5. DeWitt states Courtney accused him of hiding Kurt after he fled the hospital. So he flew to LA on 4/7 to tell her face to face that he wasn't. Oh my God, guys, come on. How can you keep it together? How can you keep it together? So this is, again, Cali. And so we have the cab driver picking this guy up on 4/7 to take him to the airport. And he's saying that he's going to meet with Courtney Love while Kurt is laying dead in that goddamn house. Okay? Pardon my language, but that's what I mean when I get animated. So that was my problem. That was my reaction to that. Like, excuse me? What'd you say? You went where? Okay. So then Michael thinks he took United down on 4/7, but this can be confirmed through the band's travel agent. She books all the band's travel. DeWitt states he returned to Seattle immediately upon finding out about Kurt's death. DeWitt stated he returned to California on the 12th. So the 8th, Cali was, Kurt was found, and Cali allegedly came back. So he left the 7th and came back on the 8th. And the 7th is the same day. Oh my God, you guys, come on. Y'all gotta be messing with me. Wait till I tell you what happens on the 7th. So this is what I mean. Like, once you go through the facts, this is why I like doing this. Because if I just told you this in a sentence, it wouldn't like y'all wouldn't believe me. So we're going step by step because here we go. So he left on the 7th, corroborated by the cab driver that he took this guy with dark hair to the airport. He states he believes Kurt took his own life. Of course he does. Of course he believes that. He was never in the greenhouse with Kurt. Stella's saying hi to my mom, who just stopped by. Sorry about that. Okay. He states that Kurt took his own life. He was never in the greenhouse with Kurt unless it was when they first moved in. He does not know where Kurt was after the Saturday morning when he awoke to find Kurt sitting on his bed. He states for the past month, Courtney and Kurt have not seen much of each other, as Kurt was getting ready for a tour and Courtney was getting out a new album. DeWitt knows of no one who would want to take Kurt's life. Yes, Stella says hi too. Okay, very, very, very important phone call here. So, to be further analyzed. Okay, 419. Completed lab request for the note found at the scene. Item 2. And the 3-page note reportedly from Rome. Item 18. Became compared to see if they were by the same writer. 19th, made a return phone call to Wendy, superintendent at Gray Top Taxi. She says that she received a phone call from a woman who identified herself as Courtney Cobain. Now, this is Courtney Love calling the cab company. She said that Courtney inquired about any gray top cabs that went to their address. Now, just pause right here. So this is the 19th. Not only has Courtney Love hired a private investigator, she has homicide detectives investigating and interviewing all these people. She has the news media dissecting every piece of this apart. And on top of that, she is also conducting her own investigation where she herself is personally making these phone calls. That's sus to me. Okay. So, Courtney was asking about who was picked up and where. So, Wendy, who recall is Kurt, is the same driver who, sorry, distracted. Just got a text my brother back real quick because he's asking me if I want anything from the store, and it's very important that I let him know that I want some chocolate. Okay. Wendy is the same person who dropped Kurt Cobain off at home. So she called him back, and she said that a driver by Wadajo Abeye went to the Lake Washington home and picked up a person who he thought did not match with the residents. The male told the driver that he recently had a burglary and needed bullets. At 8:30 a.m., the driver dropped the man off in the area of 145th and Aurora because he said he was hungry and wanted to get something to eat. The man's fare was $27. Wendy said that she was not sure about the female caller as she spoke in a very slurred manner, as if she was on something or drunk. Sounds about right. The female caller gave the phone numbers of redacted. In parentheses, investigators confirm that both phone numbers is the new unlisted number for Courtney Cobain. For the superintendent to call with the information. Wendy was advised that this information would be passed on to Courtney if it was found that the request actually came from her. She also stated that she received many requests for information from the press, and at the present time, she does not plan on giving out any information. So even these cab companies have more, well, let me not, say that, but seemingly have some integrity here in terms of saving this information from getting into the wrong hands. Unfortunately, ultimately that did happen in my opinion, but this is interesting nevertheless that on the 2nd of April, this is supposed to be the same morning that Cali saw Kurt. This cab driver who apparently recalled Great Top Taxi is a cab company that the Cobains use regularly. And for this driver to not recognize Kurt Cobain, how do you not recognize? How do you say picked up a person that doesn't match the residence, but you're going to Kurt Cobain's residence to pick up who we're supposed to believe is Kurt Cobain, who then went to purchase bullets and whatnot. So that was another major red flag for me. So again, this investigation, if you haven't picked up on my tone by this point, but if you're, don't hold your breath for any follow-up because there wasn't. Called Alan Dreyer back, who again is the attorney. He said that Courtney is interested in getting the guns back from the March incident, and she wants to turn them over to Mothers Against Violence. Dreyer was advised that detectives needed to speak with Courtney about other matters and advised that the release of the guns would be checked on. Phone call to Courtney Cobain advised her that the guns could be released and asked her if she wanted to pick them up or have them turned over to their attorney, Alan Dreyer. She advised that she would like Dreyer to pick them up, turn them over to Kiro Television, who in turn would turn them over to Mothers Against Violence, and they would turn them back over to the police. Like, the fuck, Courtney? Girl, it's been 11 days. Can we not make a public spectacle of at least something in this man's life? Let's keep reading. She advised me that KIRO was planning on doing a story and that she had already done some of the voice portions of the segment. She was advised that the guns would be turned over to Alan Dreyer per her request, and that how he chose to handle the release would be up to them. She was also advised that it was not a good idea to give her phone number out to cab companies, as the very thing she's trying to guard against would happen. Now they're also basically telling her, but they're telling her to not give out her phone number to cab companies. But why not ask her, Courtney, last time I checked, you are the wife of a super rock star who is the center of global attention right now. And you mean to tell me you're giving these cab companies your phone number because you want them to call you and let you know about who they were picking up from your house? That's sus, sister. Why are you yourself calling these cab companies? And why are you yourself so interested about who was picked up and who wasn't? So All right, I need a breather. I'm going to look at chat for a little bit while I take a sip. But yeah, like immediately, Courtney is just very, very sus. What are your guys' thoughts? Um, Courtney Hole is, in my opinion, a murderer hirer, says Alicia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely one theory that is, that is predominant. And that's primarily the theory that I considered in my analysis of events. So we'll definitely consider that hypothetical. Let's keep going. So next, or the same day, right? Yep, same day. 15 minutes later, he calls Dreyer, told him the guns would be released to him. 2:30, hand carried 117 to evidence, authorizing the release of 3 guns, the ammunition to Alan Dreyer. And later on, Kirkland made a return call to Diana Oleg of KIRO. She was inquiring about the release of guns. She states the reason for the media being involved is twofold. Courtney wants the guns to be destroyed, and the other is that Courtney wants the publicity. Y'all, you cannot make this up. You cannot make this up. Read it for yourselves. All right, let's keep going. 420. Received information from Sargent. I'm losing my ability to English. Whew. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. In evidence. Someone from evidence says that the guns are being sent to the director for disposal at family's request. A phone call to Barth Investigations left a message for Ernie. So he's been trying to get this Ernie dude to call him back for a couple of days now, but Ernie ain't calling. So Tom Grant calls back on the 21st, says his handwriting experts have changed their minds and now feel that the note to Kurt was written by Cali. And the note signed your pen pal Courtney were written by the same person. He says these experts are willing to say that this is their opinion, but probably would not be able to say that they are positive. Grant will identify the experts if necessary. It should be noted the experts are comparing faxed photocopies. Grant will fax us a copy of the writings that the experts are comparing. Now, I sense a lot of that resentment that Tom Grant mentioned, he heard in Cameron's voice. That is the tone of this police record. where I'm pretty positive. Like, I've heard interviews with Tom Grant, and if you've seen the documentaries, you will have heard him speak to, and I can almost guarantee you that this conversation was not as brief as it seems in this note, but also that Grant did not emphasize that, oh, they're just comparing faxed photocopies. Like, it's clear that right here in this note, whoever is composing this, Sergeant Cameron, absolutely does not give any importance to what Grant has to say. So this is that fax. So this is a sample of Courtney Love's writing, and this is a fax that she sent to Tom Grant, and conveniently, it is her authorization to release records to Tom Grant. So this is the note that Cali left on the stairs. And this is the your pen pal Courtney note. So, and these are the credit card transactions. This is long, y'all. An hour and almost 20 minutes of reading these. All right, let's keep trucking through. Let me see what's next. Oh, geez. A lot. Well, not that bad, actually. Okay. Yeah, it's not too bad. Oh, hell. How do I start here? Oh, well, duh. Sorry, guys. Where were we? Here, right? Okay. Finally, they get a hold of Ernie, the private investigator. Ernie said he was contacted on 4/4 by Tom Grant, and that Grant requested that he set up surveillance at the 11th and East Denny location. He said he was told that Caitlin lived at the 11th and East Denny, and that she ran a, quote, dope house. He was told that he was to watch for Cobain and was given a limited description. He was not told that Cobain was suicidal, but was told that they were looking for him for business reasons. He said he was told that Cobain had a house on Lake Washington Boulevard and another in Carnation. He said they surveilled the 11th and Denny location on 4/4 from 6:30 p.m. until 4/5, 7:30 a.m. He said they took, quote, fluff shots every hour on the hour to prove they were on the surveillance. He said they surveilled the 11th and Denny house and the Lake Washington Boulevard house until 4/7 at 1:30 when Ben Klugman called and canceled the surveillance. He said he was very upset when he found out that Grant came to Seattle and went into the house with Dylan without telling him. He said the whole deal was rush, and that he operated with very limited information. He said he would have no further business dealings with Grant. So this Ernie guy is a little bit salty, and I would want to know where is this surveillance footage. I'm assuming that Grant has it, so I'm wondering if we would be allowed access to that footage, or at least to speak with Grant about this footage, because I have some major questions. So I want to see that surveillance footage. That's what I got from this report. So from this report, what's important to me is there exists fluff shots from every hour on the hour, whatever that means. And there exists surveillance footage around the time that Kurt died and immediately afterwards. So I would definitely want to look at that. And the fact that the detectives in this case didn't even mention, so far as to mention, oh yeah, can we have a look at that? Can we see? Did you see anything suspicious? What was happening? I mean, they didn't even interview the last person to have seen Kurt alive. So May 2nd, our homie Don Cameron sends a memo that the Washington State Crime Laboratory examiners will not examine or test any firearms previously processed for fingerprints with rhodamine. So he's saying we cannot process the gun with this particular chemical, basically. So now this is almost a month later. Okay, a month after Kurt's death. The police department receives a report from the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab confirming that the suicide note found at the scene was written by Cobain. Submitted paperwork to the SPD ID unit requesting that the shotgun located at the scene be processed for Latin prints. Again, a month later, they are now processing the shotgun for prints. The results are below. The above item was processed for prints on 5/6 by senior ID technician Geronimo, badge number 4466. 4 cards of Latin prints were lifted. The 4 cards of lifted Latin prints contain no legible prints. Did you hear that? There are no legible prints on the gun. Not even on the barrel. Two days after that, I'm going to pause again to wish our Michelle a very, very happy birthday. I've been up since 3 a.m., girl. And I've been trying to send the happy birthday message, but I keep forgetting. You know how my memory is. I got to X Michelle, but it's messed up when Michelle's birthday is on the day that I'm supposed to X Michelle. So happy birthday to our very own Michelle. Taking a quick break. I'm hearing some rumors that Jen Liu is willing to come up on panel with me. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, babe. What you doing?
Just reading these police reports. Have you been listening?
Yes, I have. Aside from a phone call I took, but then I was back.
Okay. So, what do you think so far?
I think
what
you're
are
doing
your thoughts? Because I need to take a quick breather. My mouth be dry.
I think you're doing an excellent job, and I think you've brought up a lot of interesting things that were not actually covered in the documentaries. I mean, there's been several, but documentaries inherently, they only have so much time, so they cover the main points, and they can't really get into tiny details. But I've always said that a lot of times, most of the time, the devil is in the details. I also went to the Googles to look up a fluff shot. Don't do that.
What is a fluff shot?
There is nothing. There's an Urban Dictionary, and I'm not going to be fooled and click on the Urban Dictionary. But I suspect it has something to do with like, are they talking about, like, what's the context that fluff shot is being used in? Like, what are they saying?
Here, let's go back. To prove that, hold on, where are the fluff shots? Here we go.
Sorry.
So the fluff shots were taken every hour on the hour to prove they were on the surveillance. So basically, the private investigator was hired by Tom Grant, who is another private investigator. So I think fluff shots are basically just them proving that they were out on location and they didn't
Yeah, I think that's what they must mean.
Run away.
It has nothing to do with fluff that's on Urban Dictionary. Which I didn't even need to click on it to know what Urban Dictionary says. I know what a fluffer is. I didn't need Urban Dictionary's help.
Yeah, well, so yeah. But that's I mean, come on. And but yeah, the police department, when you were saying, in terms of oh yeah, of course, this was them.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
This was the Seattle Police Department during this goddamn investigation. They're just like, nope, not today, Satan.
Exactly.
Yeah. So go ahead. Your thoughts on the case so far?
I feel like, from the beginning, to me, in my opinion, I feel that the scene doesn't match who Kurt Cobain seems to be as a person. Now, I don't know Kurt Cobain personally, so I can't speak with authority. But what I can say is that I've listened to people who were close to him at that time in his life, prior to that, speak of him, and it just he seems too flighty, frankly, to have everything organized in the way that it was at the scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I find, and what I find also somewhat suspect about it is that I know Stella, she's waiting. She's like, bitch, just get to the point already. Shit. Spit it out.
Oh my
I feel you, Stella, because that's how I feel right now. I'm hearing my own self. And I'm like, get to the point. I just feel like
this feels like Friday already. I'm sorry.
It
Stella
does.
Stella.
You can't look. We're never going to stifle Stella's muchness. Let Stella live her best Stella life. I have forever, ever since all of the pieces came out, and I've never not suspected Courtney. I've always suspected that this is not a suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Because there just doesn't, there is evidence that points away from it. It's not self-harm. I don't want to use the other S word because, the YouTubes.
Oh, well, the YouTubes, are the YouTubes.
But wouldn't it be interesting if this had happened in this time versus, in 94, when it was 94, right? Those are fuzzy times for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, apparently it was for the investigators as well, because they didn't do a really good job. And at this point, having done the deep dive that I have into Courtney Love, it does, if we're going with the murder for hire theory, for example, what does make sense is police corruption, in that, it's clear that this Don Cameron guy was corrupt. I mean, he was corrupt in 99. Chances are that he was corrupt in 94. You just don't like become a corrupt cop overnight.
Right. It starts out slow. It's not like you go and put your corruption vest on and I'm like, okay, today I've decided I'm going to be corrupt.
Right.
It's little compromises over time.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another police, there were a couple of things in the police reports that are mentioned without any corroboration reports and without any follow-up. Like there would just be a random note, like on the missing persons report, it says Kurt bought a gun and he's suicidal, and Detective Terry already knows about it. Like, okay, first of all, who the fuck is Detective Terry? Why isn't he in these documents? And why wasn't he talked to about this missing persons report? Why didn't you ask Miss Wendy O'Connor what made her file the missing persons report when you had her in front of you? And guess what? She would have told you, oh, I didn't file that report. Oh, then you would have found out that it was a false police report filed by Miss Love. Like, what the hell? This is police 101. We're not even law enforcement. Like, this is just common sense.
I think a lot of where the cops went wrong in this, from what I, have seen, is that there was the note. And when they were interviewing people and talking to people with regard to Kurt and his lifestyle, I think what they really thought was, this is a depressed junkie who really never wanted to be famous, didn't really enjoy what came with fame, and said, I'm done. That is how I think that they took it. But I don't think that is true. What I was going to also say is that what would be interesting is if this occurred during 2019, 2020 in that time, or 2018, when their social media was so prevalent, and that was a huge form of communication versus little written notes. Because let
me tell you this though.
Okay, tell me this.
Hold on.
Okay.
I had to cough first.
Okay.
Whew. All right. So I'm getting distracted by Heather. Starts with stealing donut. Do you know that no one can say corroboration anymore to me without a bell in my brain? Same, Heather. Same. The word corroborate.
Yeah, it's like
ruined.
It's like Pavlov's dogs. Every single time I hear that word, whether it's pronounced correctly or not, it connotates an image in my brain. Wobblate.
Corroborate. Yes.
Wobblate.
Yes. And I forgot what I was going to say. See? Oh, well. There's too much happening. Yet again.
Stella's lit on this Thursday afternoon. I just wonder if he had, if this had happened, more recently, I can guarantee you there would be information gleaned from his texts, because those are something that the record of those is not just inside the cell phone itself, but it's also with the carrier. So maybe we could have gleaned something about his psyche from those as well. I mean,
we do have
journals can be destroyed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we do have. I do believe it would be nice to have text messages, especially between Courtney and Kurt. But there are plenty of interviews and statements from friends and notes and entries that Kurt himself wrote that will give you a pretty good idea of who he is as a person in general. And I think also we'll get an idea of his mental health as well. So we'll get into the psychological stuff, but let's just get this over with.
Yeah, let me mute, because obviously I live in a fucking combat zone And here comes the copters. Let me mute.
Oh, loud. All right. So on the 8th, Tom Grant, the private investigator hired by Courtney Love, is now very suspicious. And to Jen's point, in terms of these days social media being prevalent, back then this was a huge media sensation. And during that time and in the months and years following, this event, there were many documentaries coming out, a lot of books coming out, interviews, specials, all kinds of things that told this story in their own kind of way. And trust me, believe me when I say, I've looked at all of that shit. Like, there's so much information. And for the most part, like, I'm just focusing on the stuff that can be corroborated. And that is like major red flag stuff that, in my opinion, I don't see why it wouldn't be strong enough evidence to pursue an internal type of investigation into this detective work, because it was the shittiest work ever. So Grant then sends Courtney Love this letter, and I'm not gonna lie, people either love or hate Tom Grant. I think he's savage. Like, I do. Like, I like him. I like the guy because he just doesn't give an F. Like, he had a hunch and he went for it. And I think if I were in his shoes, I probably would have done the same. Matter of fact, I probably would have gotten myself arrested, trying to get this through these detectives' heads. Like, what the hell are you doing? All right. So, dear Courtney, I'm sure you know by now that my investigation has been somewhat more active than you might have been aware of. The purpose of this letter is to clarify my position regarding our working relationship. You may recall our trip to Carnation on Thursday, April 14th. I mentioned during the drive that I was beginning to turn over some rocks, and I wasn't sure you'd want turned over. That I wasn't sure you'd want to turn over. If only I could read, it would be great. I asked you if you wanted me to continue digging. Kat, who was in the back seat, said, "Oh yeah, she wants to know everything." You responded, "Yeah, Tom, do whatever it takes. I want to know everything that happened." Your instructions were clear, so in the days and weeks that followed, I proceeded to do whatever it takes. As the investigation continued, my attempts to get at the truth often seemed to be deliberately hindered. While reading some of the articles being written in newspapers and magazines, I discovered the information being released to the press was inaccurate and often cleverly misleading. I consider the circumstances surrounding your husband's death to be highly suspicious. My investigation has exposed a number of inconsistencies in the facts of this case, as well as many contradictions in sound logic and common sense. I'm requiring to report findings such as those to the police. So on Friday, April 15th, I spoke with Sergeant Cameron about some of what I've learned so far. As I've experienced in past cases, police detectives don't often welcome the work of outside investigators. I've learned it's somewhat idealistic and naive to think the truth might be more important than professional pride. I've decided to continue working on this case until I see it to its conclusion without additional charge. Attached, you will find an invoice which accounts for the charges billed for our services, including time and expenses. As you can see, prior to my return to Seattle on April 13th, these charges exceeded the retainer amount. However, please consider your bill paid in full. There will be no further charges. As I pursue the truth regarding the events surrounding your husband's death, your cooperation and assistance will be appreciated but not required.
Dang.
Damn.
Damn. I mean,
You know what she did?
what did she did?
Take a guess. What do narcissists and sociopaths do when they perceive a threat?
Turn it around on the other person and pretend that they're the victim in the situation?
You keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Well, yeah.
So what she did with Tom is she hired him then to conduct another investigation not related to Kurt's quote unquote suicide. So she told him, okay, that's fine. You can believe whatever you want, but guess what? You're so damn good and or shitty at your job that I want to keep you to continue investigating what I believe is financial fraud by the hands of Nirvana. So, yeah, that is what happened. So Tom Grant continued to work for her, but regarding matters not related to this.
I see. I do not think that the members of Nirvana attempted in any way, shape, or form to give her the shaft financially.
Yeah. So that's another thing that when we get to the psychological part that I talk about, but that was interesting to me that that thing with the financial part was a whole thing for her. Like she was obsessive with these millions that are allegedly being stolen from her, that she was entitled to, that was Kurt's money, yada, yada, yada. Like she was obsessed that that she was being stolen from, and there never was any substantial evidence. There was never anything to indicate that there was any sort of foul play going on in terms of that money, but to her it was so real to the point where she was like losing her goddamn mind in the public sphere. So theoretically, in terms of psychology, I was wondering if that was kind of like a psychosis. Well, I don't want to call it a psychosis. I've never treated her, so I'm not diagnosing her, but it kind of like, like that mental breakdown after having committed this and having seemingly gotten away with this, that there's this, like episode of this intense paranoia mixed with the drugs, mixed with everything else that was going on at the time. It wouldn't surprise me that she was in this like either substance induced or just,
her induced
psychosis.
I mean, so this is the thing about Courtney Love. Okay. People often compared Kurt and Courtney to Sid and Nancy. And the truth of the matter is, in this, with the money, Courtney pulled the ultimate Nancy, because that's a lot. That was always the problem between Sid Vicious and the Sex Pistols, was Nancy, because she always felt like Sid wasn't getting what he was owed. They were always, trying to give him, trying to give him the shaft, trying to steal from him. Look, I love Sid Vicious. Okay, I thought I enjoyed what he did when he did it. But the truth of the matter is, Sid Vicious was not a musician. Okay, he barely could play bass. I've seen the kids from School of Rock play bass better than Sid Vicious, and that's just the truth. And he was never getting the shaft. But what these two fail to understand, which is understandable for Nancy because she was not in the business, but Courtney was. And I'm sure that she is well aware of the business arrangement that Nirvana had with their people, the bandmates and the record company and all of that, right? Their management team, etc. And to try to pretend that they were somehow shorting her is ludicrous. And it tells you just exactly what her motivation has always been: money. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. I just don't care for Courtney Love. I think her music is trash. And I think the best thing about Courtney Love was Kurt Cobain.
Yeah. I think that
although she was good in The People versus Larry Flint. And that's all I'll say about that. And I guess she did okay in the playing Kitty Menendez in the Menendez Brothers movie.
Yeah. All right. So, well, this is the 16th, and they are, this is a actual document. So that was the reports, the actual document. 524, they get the report back, and this is the handwriting analysis from the Rome note. Okay, so the Rome note that has remained hidden and a mystery. So that was determined to be written by Kurt Cobain, according to Washington State Patrol. Okay.
Oh, Natasha.
I know. This is what they analyzed. Excuse me. And they also, let me see. Okay, so this is June 17th. Detective Kirkland and Lima returned to the residence and returned the suicide note recovered at the scene and the suicide note from Rome to Courtney Love Cobain. So she has received both original copies back of the notes on the 17th. And this is 2 days after Courtney Love's bassist also overdosed in her bathtub. And that was ruled an accidental overdose. Although it's suspected by several people that this was also due to, somehow Courtney's involvement, because Courtney was jealous of Kristen, and that Kristen was not depressed or suicidal. And as a matter of fact, that she was future oriented and had purchased a ticket to go back to Minnesota. She was leaving Courtney's band, and surprise, surprise, the morning before she's to leave, she's found dead in her bathtub. But wait, there's more. A day before she died, the detective Terry from the narcotics unit that was mentioned in the missing person report also is shot and killed in the line of duty. So this is like 3 deaths, 2 months, like all within 2 months, and all have ties to Courtney Love. Although I will say that I've read the reports from that detective getting killed, and it appears to be unrelated. But then again, you never know. So that is that. And then this is a video clip of the phone calls, I believe, that Courtney Love had with Tom Grant. And this is I believe before he was found. But let's just listen and see.
You're the one that filed the missing persons report.
Yeah, and I'll totally come forward with that because people wouldn't take me seriously.
Do you still have all the notes? The note from Rome and the original note here.
Yeah, Detective Cameron gave me back the note from Rome, and he said I would destroy this if I were you. It's not going to do you any good.
He told you to destroy it?
Red flag.
Yeah, it's like she's already coming up with the reason that the note is. I know you're fixing to ask me for that note, but I'm sorry to tell you I was told to destroy it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so listen. So keep listening. So she says that the detective told her to destroy the note because, trust me, this is going to look bad for you. So let's keep listening.
That's what he said. He said it was the day after Kristen's death. I've been bugging them for the notes back. for like
So you got rid of the original note that
I burned it, and as I was burning it in the fireplace. No, that's the safe deposit box.
But the suicide note from Rome you burnt?
Yeah, and as I was burning it, this huge pop went off, and like, it was just really weird. Everyone ran upstairs. They thought I'd shot myself, and like little pieces of, nothing else was
you do still have the note from...
He ain't trying to hear you.
Right? I mean, girl, let's keep listening.
Yeah.
The one that I got a copy of.
Yeah.
You've got that.
It's in a safe deposit box. Okay. It's on red pen, and it's on an IHOP, because I went to the IHOP.
That would help, too, to be analyzed. We could determine whether Kurt wrote that whole thing. Now, what about the other note? You mentioned in Rolling Stone about another note that he wrote to you.
It's like a letter, and it's not really like a suicide note. It's like, it seems more like, it was like a sealed envelope, and it was just like to me. And
okay, sorry. This is the same note. This is obviously a different phone call. I'm going to rewind back. But just so you can hear her inconsistencies. So initially she said that she was told to destroy the note from Rome, and that this was a suicide note. But now she's calling it a letter. Okay, so why did I just say okay? Don't ever do that.
I don't know. I was just gonna let it go. I was gonna just let it go.
Sealed envelope.
And Tom, oh my God, girl, I'm trying to rewind you. And Tom Grant is totally being a savage yet again in this one.
From Seattle, though.
Yeah.
The one that I got a copy of.
Yeah.
You've got that.
It's in a safe deposit box. Okay. It's on red pen, and it's on an IHOP, because I went to the IHOP.
That would help, too, to be analyzed. We could determine whether Kurt wrote that whole thing. Now, what about the other note? You mentioned in Rolling Stone about another note that he wrote to you.
It's like a letter, and it's not really like a suicide note. It's like, it seems more like it was like in a sealed envelope, and it was just like to me, and it seems like he wrote it in rehab.
Where'd you find it?
It was in my bedroom under my pillows.
Under your pillows?
Yeah. And I didn't tell anybody about it, but Rosemary, and I told Sergeant Cameron about it.
Yeah.
Of course.
I didn't see it.
There's only one problem with that, Courtney.
What?
I looked under your pillows, just like I looked under your mattresses. That's how I found the rohypnol between your mattresses.
Oh, he found the rohypnol there. The same drugs
and I showed it to Sergeant.
The same drug that Kurt overdosed on in Rome. Tom Grant found it under Courtney Love's mattress after Kurt was dead already.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron, and he can tell, he can.
And only Cameron.
I own it. I'll show it to you. Whatever if you want to see it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it. But what I'm telling you is, it was not there the night before the body was found, or the night before that, because you can ask Dylan about this. We took the pillows up. We were looking for drugs. We looked under the mattresses. That's where the rohypnol was. There was no note in the envelope.
Right. It was in a long legal envelope, white envelope that was sealed. It had my name on it, and it was definitely Kurt's writing, and it was right under my pillows.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I have a bunch of pillows on that bed.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
all I can say to that, Courtney, is if you say so. But I
sure, Jan. That's what he's really saying.
Paper, and it says there were 3 or 4. I think there were 4.
Why would somebody tell you to get rid of that?
Because it wasn't really nice. They talked about getting a divorce.
Ooh.
And what I was going to do is go to the Scientology place and get off pills, because I'm still taking pills, and I don't want to take pills anymore.
What are you taking now?
The same pills I was taking before: diet-codeine, Valiums. Well, not Valiums, rohypnol. The stuff I get from England, from my English doctor.
That stuff. That same stuff that Kurt overdosed on. Yeah, that stuff.
I got sick of doing dope a long time ago. I mean, right around the time that whole thing happened with Trent.
So that was Miss Love herself, and in just two of these phone calls, you can already see that she's very inconsistent. So first she says that she destroyed it, and then same breath says that, oh, you can see it, I'll show it to you.
I have it.
And this is Tom Grant's phone call with none other than Rosemary Carroll. And Rosemary Carroll, you will recall from the police notes, is the attorney for Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. Now, she's an important figure in this case because of Tom Grant and because of his recordings. Because Courtney Love was at Rosemary's house, and she was there the day before they found Kurt. And what happened that night was very, very suspicious. So the content of this call is it's between Grant and Rosemary, and they're both suspicious. So
maybe tonight if you could come over again.
Yeah, that's fine.
Stuff I want to show you.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I just there's some stuff that was was left at my house that I never thought to really look at.
Yeah.
To look at it all, quite honestly, until last night. And I guess I should talk to you about it.
Are they Kurt's writings?
No, hers.
Oh, okay. When I first found the letter, I had no doubt that Cali had written it, but it still looked strange to me. The letter just didn't make sense. It looked phony.
Right, well, it was not written by, it wasn't a sincere letter.
Right, yeah, it sounded like it was...
I thought Cali wrote it because he knew that Kurt was dead.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I felt.
boom.
Mm-hmm.
In talking to Dylan last night, I said, I might not have even mentioned your name then. I might have just said it was somebody that was standing next to Courtney or something and overheard Courtney tell you to check the greenhouse. And he said, no, she never told me to check the greenhouse.
Wow.
So...
I mean, that's, it's obvious that they're lying.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have Courtney Love on the 7th of April at 1 in the morning, around 1 to 2 in the morning, at her attorney's house with Billy Corgan, who's the singer of Smashing Pumpkins. Billy Corgan is also someone that Courtney Love had a sexual relationship with. I can't say that they had a relationship because they didn't. She was his side piece, basically. And she was at her attorney's house that morning with Billy Corgan, and she left this fucking practice sheet, like a handwriting practice sheet, at her attorney's house, practicing Kurt's handwriting. And that same night, as you can hear, Carol is confirming that Courtney indeed did tell Dylan to check the greenhouse. So they would have found Kurt had they checked it that day. Which is, again, another one of those major points. Like, it's not just a little, we can just brush this away. But this is, like, massive.
Well, yeah, because it's almost as if it had been set up in a manner for somebody not connected to Kurt or Courtney to find him.
Exactly. And to me, it sounds even like Tom Grant was intended to find him, because Courtney Love sent them to the house and she sent him there with Dylan. So, and I think what it's, going with the murder for hire theory, what this is sounding to me like is, by this point that Kurt is dead, and you're kind of surprised, like, just imagine, like, it being in a mind of a psychopath. You're kind of surprised, like, okay, this rock star is dead, and his exact time of death is unknown, but he's dead nevertheless. And thank you, Mama Bear. You're so cute. Thank you. So he's dead, and you have, the first day goes by, no one finds him. The second day goes by, no one finds him. And by this point, you're like, okay, what the fuck? But in the meantime, you're setting it up so that it looks like you're in a different state, detoxing, which she absolutely was not, as evidenced by these phone calls. She's still on the same exact drugs that she's always been on. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is when no one found him, you know, the first day, second day, third day, then she's like, she sends Tom Grant over there. They don't find him. Okay. Then she's like, well, hold on. Before I go and get myself arrested, let me just call the security company to tell them to install motion sensors in the room above the garage, you know, just because I'm worried for, you know, people burglarizing me.
Oh, you said it right. You did it this time.
I know.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. And then voila, what do you know? So Cameron, so he retired. He was able to retire, keep his pension and everything. But the next clip that I'm going to play is going to be from the documentary Soaked in Bleach. And it will just be clips of the police chief, Seattle police chief at the time of this investigation. And this interview took place or was released anyways, in the documentary in 2015. So 20 some years later, and this is what he is saying, like on the record, because this is a freaking documentary. So I don't know what else we need to conclude that this is flipped up, but let's listen.
I'm Norm Stamper. I was a police officer for 34 years, and the last 6 from 1994 to 2000 as Seattle's police chief. I wouldn't pretend that there aren't police officers who are cynical and suspicious and skeptical. That was the case in the Kurt Cobain death. If my officers heard or were made aware that Kurt Cobain had left rehab, had purchased a shotgun, was suicidal, that's of course going to affect them. Detective Cameron resigned when he learned I was preparing to fire him. He had colluded with one of his own detectives to replant evidence that had been stolen by a homicide detective at a homicide scene. And it was for that reason that I was preparing to fire him. We should, in fact, have taken steps to study patterns involved in the behavior of key individuals who had a motive to see Kurt Cobain dead. If, in fact, Kurt Cobain was murdered, as opposed to having committed suicide, and it was possible to learn that, shame on us for not doing that. That was, in fact, our responsibility. It's about right and wrong. It's about honor. It's about ethics. If we didn't get it right the first time, we damn well better get it right the second time. And I would tell you right now that if I were the chief today, I would reopen this investigation.
Hi, not your mama. So this is the chief of police, and he's mentioned throughout the case file. He's on a lot of the correspondence between the attorneys. He's in correspondence with the press. But from what he's saying here, it really doesn't sound like to me that he's read the same case files that we just read. What do you think, Jen?
What do you mean? I feel like, okay, this is what I think happened with the police. This is just my opinion. When you're dealing with somebody who is famous, and maybe not even just famous, just has a buttload of money, okay, getting into their inner circle, even if you're a cop, is extremely different. These are people that lawyer up immediately. And if their inner circle, their friends who can't, like, were on the come up with them when they used to be broke, but now they're famous or now they have money, they lawyer up those people too. It is extremely hard for cops to get in the inner circle of people like this. because they're insulated. So I kind of feel like the cops did the best they could with what they had. And I think that I feel like he's saying in this, what I took away from it is that if it were in his hands today, he would reopen the case. He is acknowledging that there were mistakes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. Yeah, oh, sorry. I just got to check whether or not I'm muted before I start rambling. Yeah, I mean, now he's saying that, but we read the reports and there were a lot of issues even back then. I mean, Tom Grant came into their office for an interview a week after Kurt's body was discovered, saying this same exact stuff, like, hey, there's something really fishy going on here because nothing's adding up. Like, mind looking at this, And they're like, nah, it's a suicide. Go away. So it doesn't really seem like they did a lot with what they had at the time, because he was saying, oh, if it was possible to know that at the time, but they had all of this information.
And right. They did. You're right. I see what you mean. But I also think in his defense, obviously, yes, he is the chief of police, so he would be in charge of an investigation. But one thing that I've learned over the years is that wanting to do an investigation and being able to do a more thorough investigation are very far apart a lot of times with resources. There's, Seattle in the 90s was, there was a lot of crime back then. I mean, it was difficult. And I'm kind of thinking that, and then there's pressure from the higher ups. And I'm wondering if he did, and it's off the record, because there's stuff that you could do off the record back in the 90s that you cannot do now. If off the record, maybe he spoke to the DA or an ADA and said, hey, look, I'm side-eyeing this. What do you think? And the DA said, you're going to have to get so much. This isn't enough. We need so much more. And
in 20
more. Does that make sense?
In 2014, thank you, Ryan, for the super chat. Thank you so much. In 2014, when they did their second so-called investigation, so by this point they had multiple documentaries on the topic, and it wasn't a secret. Like, they were highly criticized, etc., etc., etc. So at that point they knew in 2014, but they still, as a matter of fact, the case file, what I just read to you were the reports just the several months afterwards. The case file itself, records of what they have, go all the way up to like 2000 and something. So there's way more stuff that kept coming in. People kept sending them stuff in, and they kept conducting interviews and reopening old reports and reinvestigating. For example, before the Unsolved Mysteries episode was filmed, it was one of the detectives. I would have to check which one. I have to check my pictures.
Get your pictures. Ashmita.
Yeah, I gotta ask Ashmita. Yeah,
Ashmita and ask Michelle while you're there.
But one of the detectives sent out a memorandum to the crime lab, and they said they got a list of questions that they were going to be asked for the interview for that documentary. And, one of the questions on there was, well, was the pen ever tested for fingerprints? Because surely, if the question about who wrote this note is around, like, surely lifting the fingerprints from the pen would put this to rest once and for all. So the case file has the memo from the detective, and they're like something sarcastic to the point of Unsolved Mysteries doing a documentary on Kurt Cobain's death, in parentheses, of course they are. Like, shit like that in official police documents. And then they say there are questions about the pen being tested. So a year or two after the fucking body was discovered, they are testing the goddamn pen that they're claiming that the note was written with, suicide note was written with. And what do they find? Nothing. There's no prints on the pen. So yeah, that's that.
I mean,
like,
I saw a comment in chat that said, let's see, you'd think Kurt, was important enough to us. He is important enough to his fans, to his friends, to his family. He is important enough to us, right? Yes. But to the Seattle Police Department, let's just be honest here. He is simply another number. And although that is a terrible thing to be true, it is true. Police departments don't have just tons and tons of money and resources to expend on cases like this. And the fact that Kurt is so famous and that the potential suspect in this situation is also moneyed and famous makes it that much harder. The burden of proof for a regular Joe Schmo would be reasonable doubt, right?
She would have the expensive defense team for sure.
Exactly.
But the thing that she wouldn't have is, well, I guess with an expensive defense team, they could argue against what could be admitted into evidence. But make no mistake, Courtney Love is a habitual criminal.
Yes,
she has a long rap sheet, as long as 2 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. So on paper, she could have money, but maybe you could argue that all that money could pay a good team, good arguments to cover that up. But ultimately, they can't hide who she is as a person.
No, they can't.
And there's nothing pointing to, this grieving woman that wouldn't be capable of that. I mean, in all the hours and hours and hours of interrogations and crime videos and trials and testimonies that we've watched, and just me alone, like, I'm pretty sure if combined would be a good maybe 3 years of my life of just watching the Jodi Arias trial. So I can sometimes in my imagination or in my fantasy, play mock trial and put some of these people on the stand, and I've cross-examined Miss Love in my mind a gazillion times. 11 billion and one.
11 billion and one.
Yes.
Well, I mean, look, if the case were to be so if the case had gone to trial, say, this happened in 94, so I'm thinking it took a year for OJ to be on trial. He went on trial in 95. So for Seattle, and that's LA. So we'll put it 96. There's a different mindset in people and in jurors' minds in 1996 than there is now. And more complicated forensic explanations would be far easily, oh my God, Jennifer. It would be easier for the jurors to understand and accept the forensic explanations today than it would be in 96, let's say. That's when it went to trial. I think that there's an excellent case, more than an excellent case, for this to be reopened, re-examined, and potential charges to be filed and taken to trial. Yeah. But I will say, I think that if this had gone to trial in 96, because if you think about it back then, I mean, I watched the OJ trial, and although I was fascinated by Dr. Lee, I was only 18. And although I had my mom and my dad who are in the medical field, so I had a little more of an advantage, some of the stuff he was explaining, I was like, wait, what? And you could, and I, the jurors have talked about it after the fact, and the evidence was so new then that they had a really hard time understanding it. There's other factors that played into that case that are completely different, but just speaking to that part of it, they did have a little trouble understanding and accepting what was being put forth by the prosecution. Poor Marcia Clark.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I might disagree with you on that. I think that there would have been enough to create reasonable doubt. But although, I will say that we still haven't seen the full autopsy report, so we don't know the full content of it.
Mm-hmm.
But just based on that toxicology report alone, and some of the expert testimony that I'm sure the state would have put on the stand as well, would have made it difficult to argue. Because ultimately, like, the bottom line, and I'm going to play one of those clips that I've prepared for a future video, but I'm going to play it now. And this is also from Soaked in Bleach. And this is from one of the experts that Tom Grant hired, I'm assuming, for this documentary. So
before you do that, can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm not excusing poor police work, okay, at all.
Oh, I didn't.
There's a comment. There's somebody. I mean, I know who said it, but I can't. I'm not looking at the comments right this second. I'm not attempting to make excuses for poor police work. I have said repeatedly, both in chat and today, that I think the police did a bad job. I don't think that they collected the evidence that they should have collected. I think they took it way too much at face value, even though it shouldn't have been, because immediately there were some things that were wrong about the death scene, and that's just
like
the truth.
The shell casing.
Exactly. There were things that were not so. I mean, they're not like in your face, right? Where you're attempting to make it look.
Martin Luther.
Sorry, that's okay. You're attempting to make it look like self-harm, but the gun is missing. I mean, those are obvious. You know what I'm saying? Some of these things were more subtle. And but I've always said that it should have been investigated. I'm just trying to come at it from 1994 versus today, because that's it.
I think you're right when you say that this case, if presented well by a team of people who know what they're doing, would get, I think the chances of it being investigated are high, because there are some of these major things that you can't just sweep under the rug. Mm-hmm. And I think the right agency needs to be approached, because at this point, even attempting with any sort of local agency or local police department would be a waste of time, in my opinion. I don't know if like the Department of Justice at this point would do this investigation, but definitely some sort of federal agency needs to look into the investigation of this case in particular. And if I were in any form or position of authority in this department, as soon as any allegations started surfacing about the Sergeant Cameron, and his misbehavior or whatever the hell he did, immediately I would hire someone to re-look at every single case that sergeant has investigated in the past, and reevaluate those cases, and also interview and investigate thoroughly any partners that person has worked with. But given the fact that, he was allowed to retire right before he was supposed to face these consequences, again, tells me that as cute and fragile as this police chief looks in this footage, suggests to me that, hey, like, tampering with an evidence or hindering a criminal investigation, last time I checked, in any jurisdiction is a federal offense. So the fact that he was able to retire and keep his pension and his title, and still, even in his obituary, is celebrated as this, amazing Seattle police detective, I think is bullshit. And I think what's even more bullshit is the media and the whole entertainment industry that have continued to perpetuate and allow that narrative to continue, and to continue to market this as this tragic story of yet another lost, depressed,
Exactly.
junkie who got lost in this fame and fortune, and so much so that he offed himself.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I've read his journals, and it's not. It doesn't go past me that depression is complicated. I'm very well aware of that, and I'm also aware of the issue concerning suicide and the problem that it is. But again, this is not done, but what I'm looking at so far, there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence to suggest that Kurt was in a depressed state of mind during that time period. And that's what really gives me that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. So
I just think, like I said, I feel like, and this is another point that I want to make. So when you bring a case to trial, the burden of proof is on the state. Obviously, there are 12 jurors. They have to convince all 12 jurors. The defense only has to convince one juror. If one juror will be a holdout, they can do it. They can vote not guilty, or they can declare a mistrial, causing this whole thing to have to start all over again.
Which I think is fine. Like in the case, so tomorrow, by the way, everyone, we're going to be doing our roast on Dalia DiPolito. That's another case, and it's out of Florida. But in the Dalia DiPolito case, she, like, there kept being a mistrial, and I think they finally got it after the third or fourth time. So I guess that's on the one extreme, like worst case scenario, like if it doesn't go well the first time, oh well, like, we'll find a freaking way. But I'm kind of sort of convinced that the case does have a bulletproof would have a bulletproof case if this was to go in front of a jury. Again, I don't know if it would be for murder, but like, look, just the case as it is right now, without anything, there's some time for her to serve, and there would be. So,
well, remember though, this is 20 years ago, right? Yeah. So
Elvis Presley,
more than 20 years ago. So the statute of limitations on murder doesn't go away. However, the lesser crimes that are still felonies, that they may be, the statute of limitations may be up. Yeah. I don't know. I'm an Aquarius, and so I will, like to argue the other side.
It's just it's discouraging.
It's discouraging. I'm sorry
for me, because I think this is not just a Kurt Cobain problem, although it is. Like, this is all about but what more so about, I think what this is. Oh my God, I completely lost English now, but I think what is important about this case that we can learn, just putting that fame aside and putting the glitz and glamour aside, I think what's present in this case that we've seen in other true crime cases is this toxic love, this toxic attachment between two people who are deeply disturbed and use each other to sort of heal their, dark, whatever it is that they have, like to continue perpetuating that cycle of trauma, whatever it is. I call it traumatic bonding.
That's what I call it, trauma bonding.
So yeah, so at the core, at the bottom of this, you have an absolutely toxic relationship that is slowly and you know, because they are famous and because they are in position of power, there's this sort of, they, you know, like they get to get away with whatever they want. And for someone like Courtney, for someone with a personality like Courtney Love's, that is extremely dangerous. And in that sense, so in her history, if you look back at all the shit that she got away with, you know, beginning with just months after they got married, you know, after the release of Strange Love, the Vanity Fair article, when they took their daughter away just shortly after she was born, you know, their daughter was taken away because Courtney was on drugs while pregnant. And, you know, back then you can already see that this is going to be a train wreck. And people recognized it. People warned Kurt, you know, but from then until now, like if there's one thing that doesn't change, that's Courtney's craziness. I think over time there is plenty of material to show a whole slew of crimes that she got away with just because she is in the position of power. So they do get that insulation. So I get that part. I get it. You know, and to prosecute and to put this into motion, it would be a big deal. And that's why I said, like, the right agency would have to deal with this, because it would come with a massive storm of just all kinds of fuckery. And I don't think that any agency with any like sanity would willingly and voluntarily go into this shitstorm. So
well, yeah. And plus, this is another interesting point. Seattle PD has stopped this from being reopened for all these years because they did not do a real investigation at all. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so to that point, here's the part. This is what happens when you don't do a case correctly from the beginning. So if they were to do a internal affairs investigation, okay, and they opened up that can of worms, do you know how many convictions would be called into question because of one or two cops that handled them? You know what I'm saying? Because they're called into
good.
Even if, listen to me, but I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is it creates a crazy situation that is expensive for the police department. So as much which is wrong. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying the motivation behind them wanting to keep it closed is money. And it has nothing really to do with, I mean, not that there isn't corruption, but it's extremely expensive for every single case that a officer has been a part of to be called into question now because his integrity. And that's what keeps them from wanting to do it.
Here's the thing. So I actually have an example from my personal experience that I could use to counter your statement. So you're right. The police, it would be financially burdensome for them to reinvestigate every case that particular detective investigated. However, in the example, so I was part of a project here in Chicago. So in Chicago, we had a police commander. His name was George Birch, or John Birch. Sorry, John Birch. And he was accused by multiple men of color of torturing them into false confessions. So, and this was back in the 90s, go figure, right?
Right.
And there were multiple cases of men of color who were convicted for various crimes, including murder, based on false confessions. So finally, there was this big case in Chicago. These two brothers shot down a cop, or were accused of it anyways, and they were tortured into a false confession, basically, by the police. So a small group of attorneys who were representing these brothers started digging into these claims, because at the time of arrest, both of the brothers had injuries consistent with what they were reporting. Anyway, so they started looking into these statements, and once that became public and these attorneys came out with it in their filings, so on and so forth, that caught the attention of the media, and that's where it started. Eventually, this started back in the 90s, and it took a long time, and I came in at the tail end of it in 2015, where finally this same group that eventually over time just continued to fight and advocate, and in any way that they could. It was a group of attorneys and other professionals who came together and volunteered, basically, and continued to do this research. Eventually, what happened is in Chicago. So Chicago is the first city in the United States that has acknowledged that, yes, they did have a corrupt police department in Chicago in the 90s, especially that precinct. I believe it was 1 or 2, where this particular individual was in charge. And yes, they do acknowledge that this was racially motivated, because all of the men that were forced into false confessions or tortured into false confessions were men of color. And third, the city put in an ordinance that, as a reparations to the police department's failure to protect and serve its citizens, they have dedicated funds for a mental health center to be built for survivors of police torture or any kind of police brutality, which I thought is incredible. Now, the other good thing about that is the laws that go with it and that change. So what happened is in Illinois, they passed a bill specifically related to this event, wherein they now provide individuals the opportunity to request an independent investigation into their case because of claims of police brutality, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, long story short, but that's from my personal experience in how you can have it so that you can have each of these things investigated independently. And that's unfortunately if that person themselves requests that. So anyway.
Which I'm agreeing that it should be. What I'm saying is that I'm only explaining why the police are stonewalling. It probably has very little to do with Kurt Cobain's case itself and more to do with other cases that were before his. So I think that the best answer for this situations like these is exactly what happened in Chicago: advocacy. And
Monica, thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. And more importantly, not just voting in the big elections, but voting in the small elections. Those are the people that really,
yes,
that matter. It's not that matter. Those are the elections really that do matter. That's where the changes happen. You start low and you work your way up the totem pole. And I agree that there is a problem with police officers. They're human. Do I think every police officer is a jerk? No, but I don't think all. I don't want to say all people are jerks, because you guys all know how I feel about people. I don't really like people that much. I like my circle super small, but but you know what I'm saying? It only takes one bad apple to spoil the entire bunch. I mean, that saying is there for a reason.
And
but I think
absolutely.
but I think that, and there's the code also in the police too. Because we don't know that there weren't detectives investigating this situation or other situations that had their side eye going and went up through the chain of command and said, hey, look, I don't think this is right. But they're discouraged even from reporting stuff within their own ranks. That's another fundamental problem. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But I'm just explaining, I think, why the police are stonewalling. I don't think it actually has anything to do with Kurt Cobain's specific, although there are issues in the investigation. I think it's a larger issue than just his case. That was my point. I went a long way around.
Sure. It would open many cans of worms. How about that? But yeah, so we've been on for I've been on for over 2.5 hours. So this is a good time to stop.
I agree.
This is too much information. So we'll stop here. Thanks you guys for listening. And if you're watching the replay, thank you if you've made it this far. So for today, I'm going to end it with another song. And this one I chose because it's just Kurt's vocals isolated from Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I don't know, every time I hear it, it gives me goosebumps. So I don't know, I love his voice anyway. So that's going to be that. And then I put a slideshow over it of the topics that we're going to be discussing next time. So, whew.
You did great, Dr. B. You did.
Jen.
I know you're so passionate about this case, and I love it. I love seeing you passionate about something that doesn't start with a W.
Yeah. Oh, Humanimal. Hi. Oh, I'm glad you made it. But yes, we're just wrapping up. So be sure to replay. I'm just reading. You get 2 hours of me reading and ranting and Jen Lou's commentary. So it's fun. But yes.
Commentary and shenanigans.
Yeah. So don't forget to come back tomorrow night, our Friday night roast. Tomorrow we have Dahlia Dippolito. So that's going to be super fun. I can't wait.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, and enjoy the song. Oh, let me find it.
Okay, well, while you're finding that, I want to ask.
Oh, wrong one. Go ahead.
What is an Aquarian Gemini? I'm an Aquarius because I'm the 28th. But leave a comment for me after the live, and please explain to me why you think I'm an Aquarius Gemini and what that is.
Well,
please.
Yeah, I did see the comments about the zodiac or whatever, but I'm a Gemini. So what are y'all talking about, Geminis? Y'all better watch y'all's mouth. We're the life of the party.
My sister is this explains so much about why you and I click. My sister is a Gemini.
Oh, and you said you're Aquarius, right?
I'm an Aquarius. Yeah, I get along with pretty much every sign. I don't really. Yeah.
I think that you and I are the magic combo because you are. Are you water?
I'm an air sign. But
what the hell?
I'm the water bearer.
Aquarius. Well, okay.
I don't know. I'm the water bearer, but I'm an air sign. Pisces.
So am I.
Pisces is a water sign. Cancer is a water sign. I can't think of another one. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
let's play the song.
Every time I pull up a video to play, I want to put it in the queue, but it automatically plays. So I got to find that setting to turn that off because it's annoying. I know.
It's so rude. The rudes. They have the rudes.
So anytime I try to add a video, I'm trying to hit pause as fast as possible too. But yeah, anyway, so all right, well, thank you everyone.
No, I think it's a compliment. I just want to know what it means. Like I want her to like explain what that is, like what that means as far as my personality goes. That's all. Yes, Mama Bear, you are a full-blown Capricorn.
I love the knife. All right, everyone. Well, have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow, and enjoy Kurt's vocals.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Guns. Bring your friends, it's fun to lose and to pretend she's overboard and self-assured. I know, a dirty word. Hello, 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 hello. With the lights out, it's just dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm a lotto, I'm a vino, I'm a mosquito, my libido, yeah. Hey. Yeah, I'm worse at what I do best, and for this gift I feel blessed. A little group has always been, always will until the end. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. With the lights out, it's just dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm a lotto, I'm a bino, I'm a mosquito, my libido, yay! Hey, yay! And I forget just what tastes, so yeah, I guess it makes me smile. I found it hard, was hard to find, well, whatever, never mind. Hello, 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 hello. With the lights out, it's just dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm a lotto, I'm a bino, I'm a mosquito, my libido. I deny,